All right. So let's get into our uh stuff here. Now one thing I was going to do, I think I mentioned last time, is maybe adding some audio into this. And so kind of the thing I want to really portray here. So again, with this idea that programming is programming, the language doesn't necessarily matter. Kind of the same thing can extend to this idea of Unity, is even though we keep using different new components and things like that, we kind of see that they all work the same way. To access a component inside of the program, we go and um, uh, we get the game object, we ask for one of its components of a certain type, and then we work with that particular component. So, let's go ahead and try to incorporate something like that in, so we have a little bit of sound and stuff. So what I'm gonna do here is, let's go in here. I'm gonna go with I don't know, let's see, like MP3 download. I don't know, let's do it like a sword attack sound, something like that. Royalty-free sound effects. That doesn't look like what I want. Doesn't have to be anything great. I just need a Ooh, they're definitely shooting lasers. It's got to be lasers. Okay, what's this guy? Oh, plasma pulse? Ooh, that has to be what it is. All right. I can't just download it. Killing me. Sword sound effect MP3. Oh yeah, Ninja Stars. Can I download that? Tell me. I can sign in with that. Spinning and throwing object. Okay. Okay, so now I have a MP3 I downloaded there. So I'll go back into my project, and I have inside my assets folder, I'll go ahead and create a folder. Let's just call this guy sounds. So I'll open up sounds, and then I'll drag that guy in there. So now I have a sound that's been imported. Now, I probably want to have the sound connected to my fight controller. Um, so I can do a couple different things here. Let's just drag this in. Right. So we're going to pick an audio source. And then for the audio clip for that audio source, I can't pick it that way. Just so we have something we can work with, I'm going to go to our asset store, search online. We'll just make sure we have something compatible with Unity. All right, let's call this Byte Sounds. And we want to choose free assets. Free sound effects pack. Perfect. So we're going to add that to our assets. And here's our package manager in there. So we want to go ahead and we want to download this guy. And then we want to import it into our project. This is kind of the same thing we did with Chomp. And there's well, not a zillion, there's a bunch of them. I'm not going to go through and pick and choose which ones, but you can do that if there's only one of these sounds. Oh, we could have walking in chainmail, tsunami hitting a large city. Oh, all sorts of great stuff we can use in here. But you can pick and choose if you don't want to bring in all of these. Oh, that's right. So I'm pretty sure that by default, Unity can only handle WAV files, which are uncompressed. There is a way to use MP3s. It's just with a different component, and I don't remember what that component is. So, but we'll just go this route. So let me go back into my, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and delete my sounds folder, which will get rid of that asset. We'll just pretend like that never happened. We'll go back to our fight controller here. Let's go into our free pack of sounds. Ooh, bloody punch. That's good enough. All right, so we will, I think, let me just remove this component. I think you can do it the way I was trying to do it initially. Just drag that guy over here and it automatically creates your audio source for that guy. Right now it's set on play on awake when this thing first launches. So if I launch the game right now, it's just going to play that sound one time. All right. But that's not really what we want to have happen. We want it to make that attack sound every time that one of our dudes attacks. So we're going to unclick that on the play on awake. Now we want to go ahead and get access to this audio source inside of our flight controller. So let's go back over to our Visual Studio here. And this is going to work the same way as we've gotten rigid bodies and things like that. So, you know, this allows you to kind of play around with, or not, right, oh, there we go. Unity to do different things. So we're in our fight controller. We're going to go ahead and give ourselves a private audio source variable called this guy attack sound. And then inside of start, we'll say this dot attack sound is equal to this dot game object dot get component audio source. All right, so now we have that guy. And then what we want to do is down here, when we do a try attack, we can maybe make the decision, do they always attack or only when does it always make the sound or only when they hit? Because that's kind of the bloody punches, like if they actually hit them. So if you remember inside of try attack, if the attack roll is greater than or equal to the defender's armor class, then we're going to maybe play this this sound. So we'll go ahead and say this dot attack sound dot play. And I think we actually want to say play one shot. It might not actually it might not actually matter in this case because our thing is not set to loop and it's short enough, but I think play one shot might actually have a better, actually, hold on, that's audio source play one shot. what's play? Oh, play one shot is actually it looks like it would be a static function, even though it doesn't show it there, where we would say audio source, the name of the class, dot play one shot, and then we'd have to give it the clip. So instead, we're just going to tell this audio source to play, which is that guy right there. So when we hit, we'll tell our attack sound to go ahead and play. Let's go back into our scene here. Go ahead and hit play, and now only when they hit should we hear the attack sound. Yeah. You shook it off. Oh, perfect. Feels like there's too much delay. Our fight's too slow. Okay, but in any case, it's working. We have some sounds playing now. Now we do have some other sounds. We could have some stuff kind of just playing in the background if we want. Isn't there a way for me to view these as a list? Let's see, Feel and Finder, right? Yeah, so now I have a list of these guys a little bit. I think there's a way to do this inside of Unity to get a list, but let me just see if there's anything that ooh, Dragon Spitfire, Earthquake. Ooh, Ice Cavern Loop. Ooh, Indiana Jones Punch. I wonder what that would have sounded like. All right, well, we know both of those. So we have our Ice Cavern Loop. Let's go back in here. First thing we're going to do is we are going to replace this guy with Indiana Jones Punch. So I just clicked on this and then typed it in, and it knew about the asset. Let's just hear that real quick. I want to know what the Indiana Jones Punch sounds like. Ooh, it's a whip. Okay, good enough. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and have our loop. I don't remember what it was called now. Ice Cavern Loop. All right, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into our component. We're going to add a audio source. Ice Cavern Loop. We'll go ahead and say play on awake. Okay, so now we have something interesting going on here. We have this single game object with two different audio sources. Now, if you go into our code over here, inside of start, I'm getting the attack sound from my game object, and I'm getting the audio source component. Well, which audio source component is this going to give me, since there's technically more than one? My guess is it's probably going to give us the last one, because it's going to give us the most recent one that we added. I would think it probably adds it as a stack. I think we've seen that before. I will say play on awake, and I'll also say loop. And let's see what we get here. No, it's like that. All right, so sounds good enough, I guess. Now, I would say that this is not great programming practice. This kind of falls underneath that category of default values for things. Now, there is a way for us to get a specific, to get a list of all the components for a game object and go through and pick out the ones we want. But because of the way we're currently getting values, for instance, this guy right here, where we're just asking the game object to get us one of its components, doing it this way relies on that component being unique in that game object. And many components have to be unique. Okay, but sounds kind of maybe seem a little bit different than that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove this component, our ice cavern loop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty game object here. And we're going to call this guy, I don't know, let's call it sound engine, something like that. All right. Now, I didn't like that ice cavern sound. So let's see, do we have another? Rowboat loop. I guess that's what we're going with. All right, so we're gonna go with sound engine. It can't be worse than the other one. And we're gonna add a audio source. And we're gonna pick rowboat. Rowboat loop. We're gonna say play on awake. And we'll go ahead and tell it to also loop. That way it'll keep playing it again and again. So we don't need to do anything programmatic here because we just have a game object that has that guy hanging on it and it just plays when the scene starts. So let's see what this sounds like. It really kind of sounds shockingly stupid, but we're going to leave it for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the volume down on that guy so it's just kind of in the background type thing, so we can kind of control that that side of stuff. So decent enough, let's say. You probably want to get a better fight scene sound. I was trying to get the Final Fantasy fight scene sound, but and I'm sure I can, just I don't want to waste any more time getting that. So replace that with a better fight scene sound. All right, so now for our homework, now that we have some awesome special effects, we were supposed to add some commentary because when we're just watching the game right now, you know, we can listen for the sound now when there's actually a hit. So now we actually get some feedback when a hit starts. One thing I'm going to do here, though, real quick, is I'm going to change our I enumerate this guy to no longer wait 2 seconds. Let's just try 1 second. Because the fight seems a little bit slow at this point. Let's just see if this is better. All right. Let's call it better, even though you might want to time the animations a little bit better for that. So we'll leave that as an exercise for the reader. This is as good as it gets when I'm doing it. All right. So at least that's a little bit easier to test since they're attacking more quickly. You can change your animation to maybe have them happen more quickly, like a very short little animation. But now what we want to do is we want to have some way of giving some information about what just happened. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to our scene here a 3D object. We'll do another text mesh pro. You can decide what you want to. So we're going to say this is game commentary. All right. And where is this guy? That's my Y. So I'm looking straight down at it now. So let me get my sample text on there. There's Chomp. Chomp's right there. Okay. So I'm going to move this guy, let's say, like here for right now. Let's see if I can see it now. Looks like I can see it now. Let's move it a little bit more. Oh, I'm moving the camera. Actually, that's maybe okay. Let's go with that. And it's perfect. We'll just assume. I'll just drop it down slightly. Oh. Drop the commentary down slightly. And we probably want to make it a little bit smaller font. So let's maybe go with 20. See what this dude looks like now. Let's make it even a little bit smaller than that. Go with 10. Right. Now we could actually, it actually seems to be positioned pretty perfectly right now. So I'm going to leave it up there rather than screwing with it anymore. But you may have wanted it to have just, hovering right here. You can mess around with the different things for your commentary. You can decide what's the color of it, the boldness, that type of stuff. We want it to be a red text. We can do that. Now it's red text. You could also even change the color of the text if you wanted to. And we'll look at that. So let's actually go ahead and give ourselves programmatic access to this Text Mesh Pro right now. And then we can look at some of the things we can do with it, since we're definitely going to need some programming stuff with it. So we'll come up here to our flight controller, our flight controller, and we're going to make this a public variable because we want to be able to drag that Text Mesh Pro in there. So we're going to say Text Mesh Pro, and we're going to call this guy Fight Commentary EMP. Good enough. I'll go ahead and save that. So now we come back out here, we go to our flight controller, and we see that this guy is now waiting for us to pass it some Fight Commentary Text Mesh Pro. So we'll go ahead and drag our Text Mesh Pro in there. All right, so we now have that guy. And we saw that we have this thing called vertex color. Let's just go and see how we can programmatically work with that. Kind of seeing this skill of, I'm looking at a component, I see these various attributes of a component. How can I manipulate them programmatically? How could I change the font size and things like that? So let's just look at vertex color. It's probably going to want us to give it RGB numbers or something like that. We might not spend any time on that, but let's just see. This is kind of that idea of, once you have that base skill set, you can do different things with it. It's not a matter of memorizing the all of this different stuff. So we'll say this dot fight commentary. Let's see. Let's just type in color. And we're going to set the color, and it's a color variable. So if you just put a dot in there, you can see all the different things you can do. We can set the color, and the color is going to be this of a type called color that it wants us to set. So if I do color equals, I'm going to just make a guess here. Yep. So when I type in color, which is the name of a class, and we see that there's all these things, color.black, color.blue, color.clear. What can you tell me about black, blue, clear, cyan? What can you tell me about those things programmatically? What kind of things are they? Tell me as much as you know about them. So this is something that presumably none of you have heard about until today, unless you've experimented with it a little bit. It's a class we just ran into called color. We presume that it's probably the name of a class because it has a capital letter and we saw it as the return type of something else. But now when I type in color and I see that it has all of these different options, what can you tell me about black or blue here? Just based on what you know so far that you've learned in class about programming. Any theories? You think they're static or non-static? You think black is a static class member or a non-static class member, and why?
I think it's static because it's called with the class itself, not an instance of the class.
Yep. So we're using the class name to call this thing. Therefore, this thing must be static. Okay. Now, this guy is a member of a class, so he's one of three things. He's either a field, a method, or a constructor. Which of those three things is black or blue? Is it a field? Is it a function, or is it a constructor? And how do you know? Oh, all right, well, I'll go ahead and answer it. So I'm pretty sure the person who just answered the last one already knows the answer to this one too. Okay, this guy is going to be a field, and fields are variables that belong to a class. So this is a static field that belongs to the color class. How do we know it's a field? Well, in this case, the telltale sign is there's no parentheses. So there's no parameter list. Therefore, it is a field. If there were parentheses, that means it's either going to be a function or a constructor. We can tell the difference in those by how it's being used. In this particular case, if it was black with an open and closing parentheses, let's say, we would say that's a function. It's not the name of the class, and it's not being used during the time of us instantiating the class. So constructors are those special case type things. All right, so putting this all in context, try to think about this from the perspective of what we've been looking at all along. So, I mean, I keep referencing that we're using Unity here, kind of like if you have to give a dog medicine, you hide the medicine in its food. Okay, so we're trying to do something fun here with Unity, so it feels like you're making a video game and stuff, but we're actually learning about computer programming contents or concepts. So even if we were outside of a game here and you were working in industry writing business applications and the company gave you their current library of stuff that they've worked with over the last many years, and you looked at the documentation, you see a new class and you saw something with static versus non-static, and you looked at fields and functions and constructors, just by knowing these primitive ideas that we're talking about here that I just keep asking you about over and over again, you can immediately start using those tools. You don't have to know that much about them. Maybe through exploration, you find out more about them, but you don't really need to know that much. So I'm going to change this guy to blue just because we saw that we hard coded it to red before. So now if I go and run this, since this is happening inside of start, we see that it is red before we even hit play. It should now turn to blue. So there's our blue. All right. I feel like we need to put like an ocean pattern for the floor or something if we're going to have this rowboat stupid sound playing in the background. What's this guy? Walking in chainmail. That's not going to be any better. Okay. So in any case, we have the ability to change the color with this guy, and this is just an example of that. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to set this color back to, let's just do black. All right, so we'll have the default text be black, but then what we can do is maybe change the color along with the text based on what is happening. Okay. So we're not going to change the color down here or inside of start. So let's go to our try attack. All right. Inside of our try attack, this part right here is where stuff occurs. Inside the else is when something misses. Right now we're printing something out. Let's just go ahead and let's say this dot fight commentary TMP dot text is equal to attack misses, something like that. All right, so we'll update that when the attack misses. Now, what we probably also want to do, though, is when we first start trying an attack, we're going to say this dot fight commentary dot text is equal to nothing. So let's empty it out before an attack, and then we'll set it to something during the attack. And remember, there's going to be a 1 second delay there. So at the very least, we should be able to see the attack. All right. But right now, we're only going to be noticing when there's a miss. This is all right. So we have some of that. We probably also want to go ahead and actually, I'll do this programmatically. We could come into our game commentary and we can set, in fact, actually, let's just change this text so when somebody comes and sees this, we're going to say put attack commentary here. We'll just place that on our stuff there so that if we were to click on our camera and we see that it says put attack commentary here, that kind of reminds us that's what that Text Mesh Pro was for. Now, when the fight first starts, we probably want that to say nothing. So we'll go ahead and handle that programmatically. That way we don't all of a sudden have this like Text Mesh Pro that's over here, but we never see it on the screen here because we've changed the text to nothing in here. So this will remind us how we might use it. So when we first start this scene, we'll say this dot fight commentary TMP dot text is equal to the empty string. All right, so now it'll start off as the empty string, and then it'll only a miss, we have another miss, so on and so forth. All right. So now what we want to do is maybe give us some commentary for a hit. All right. So when we empty it out here, we're also going to go ahead and say fight commentary TMP. Actually, we can do it before an individual attack. All right. So if they're going to hit, we get our damage roll right here. So we can go ahead and say this dot fight commentary TMP dot text equals hits for, let's say attack hits for. And then we'll add in our damage roll. And we're going to go ahead and say whenever we have a hit, we're also going to change the color to red. So this dot fight commentary TMP dot color equals color dot red. Now, just to rehash something we already saw, when I click on setting the color, just to show you how we knew to say something like color dot here, we notice here that the color field of TextMesh Pro is a color object. So that tells us that the kind of thing we're going to be setting this guy to is something from the class color. So once we saw that, we can just type in color and just see what's possible inside of the color class. So we see all these built-in things, but we also have the ability to set like RGB values if we want to have something more precise than one of their built-in values. We also have this thing, which I don't remember if I think we've messed with it a little bit when we were having our guy move, but we have this thing called lerp. There's also a similar function called slurp. And what this does is it, in this context, it would allow you to transition to another color over a period of time. So see over here, we're going from color A to color B over a period of time. So if that made sense for your game, for you to transition between colors, maybe you have a hit point bar or something like that, and as maybe it starts off in it's blue color, and as you start getting more and more hurt, it starts turning more red. Whatever, you can mess with different things like that. Okay, but the point here is that notice that we don't have to go and look at the documentation every 5 minutes, since we know the kind of the bread and butter of how static versus non-static works and how classes work. So we can just explore it right in here, and then if we need some additional explanation, we can go and get that. All right, so I'm going to change the text here to attack hits for whatever the damage was, and then I'll change the color to red. I went ahead and did it in this order. I'm not sure we would notice, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to have the text. Well, actually, the text is already the empty string, so it actually doesn't matter. So we can go ahead and change the color of the empty string to red first, and then set the text. That way we never have a period where we maybe see a glimpse of black text or something like that. All right, now similarly, when the attack misses, maybe we say the color is equal to color dot, I don't know, what's let's make it clear. So let's make the miss a blue. All right, so now we'll get some commentary regardless of what just happened. Back 53 misses. Oh. Okay. So now somebody is dead. All right. So we want to go ahead and update this now for when somebody dies. So inside of our fight, remember, we set this should attack equal to false whenever the fight is over and we don't start the coroutine again. So what we could do here is inside of our print, instead of printing this out, we can go ahead and say who won. So we can say this dot fight commentary TMP dot text equals hero wins, something like that. We can change the color if we want to change the color. And similar here, we can say the monster wins. Monster gets an extra couple of exclamation points, it appears. All right, so our monster wins. There was a little bit extra animation there at the end. All right, so now we have that kind of working. So what we probably want to have now, so we have some visuals. So now as we're watching it, we see the game kind of unfold. We can then create an animation that maybe makes our player, you know, I don't know, or whoever lost kind of roll over and point to the sky or something like that. We could do that as an animation if we want. Let's just see what our current animation thing looks like. So we have our chomp fight animation, we have our ghost fight animation, and then here's our state machines for those. So for chomp, we he can go from the starting state to fighting like this, but we can also add another state. So I can create a state here. I think this will let me do what I want to do here. Will it not? I want to change the name of that. Oh, do it there. Yeah, so let's call this die. All right. And then we're going to add a parameter here of type trigger. And we're going to call this guy should die. And it'll be off by default. And I'm going to go ahead and change new state to be call it default state. Just change the name. So we're going to go ahead and change what die looks like. We're going to make a transition to this. Oh, I have to go the other direction. We're going to transition to the die state if our should die is triggered. All right. So now what do we want to have happen in this die state? We want him to kind of roll over. Am I going to be able to? This is our actual full animation. Am I able to create another animation for this guy here? Or I have to do that as a whole separate animation? I might not want to go down this path. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I think we need to go down a different path for that. So I'm going to get rid of the should die. We'll leave it at the old animation. But what I'll do is we're going to go ahead and just change his rotation, change the transform on that game object instead. So if we go back to our scene and we click on Chomp, and let's say when Chomp dies, we want him to go ahead and look at him head on. So this is what our scene currently looks like. I'm just going to click on rotation here. I'll just start rotating him. So we want to rotate about X to -90. All right, so let's go and do that for our, we'll do that programmatically. So we have access to our game objects for our hero and our monster. So if the monster wins, we're going to go ahead and say this dot hero game object dot transform dot rotate. Now rotate, There's a couple different versions of that. Can we just tell it? So if we set the rotation directly, that's a quaternion. That's that nasty math you don't want to deal with. So we can go to rotate. There's multiple versions of rotate. I can't see the versions in there very easily, but what I'll just do here is unity, rotate, game object, 90 degrees. And we'll just look at, see what somebody has done for this. This is rotating around. Oh yeah, we can do a vector 3 up. So here's one of the versions of rotate where we can say, I think ours will be negative 90 and then 0, 0, since we're rotating it from. So we'll say rotate negative 90, 0, 0. I don't think we need to change the other things. So this will be when the hero, actually it's not when this should be when the monster wins. When monster wins, that means the hero died. So the hero will go nose up. And then let's go and look at our code here. How do we need to, when we rotate the monster? That's also negative 90. So we'll set that back to 0 here. So we'll go up here where the hero wins. And this will be our monster game object. We'll rotate negative 90. All right. Now you could do this over, I mentioned before, over a lerp or a slurp, which just changes the way they linearly interpolate. So you can make them kind of fall over slower. You can make an animation to make them fall over slower, but we're going to call this good enough for my skill level of making things look awesome. Man, it's a definite. Fine. All right, there we go. Actually, a pretty good angle of rotation. We can assume the player is going to do the same thing for right now. All right, so that kind of gets us to that point. So now let's say we have a reasonable fight scene. You can put a background or whatever on there if you'd like. What we want to do here for our homework, now that we have, let's call it a working fight scene, we want to update our game such that a player goes into a fight scene and only, oh, let's see, goes into a fight scene when they are trying to collect a pellet. The player only is able to successfully collect the pellet if they win the fight. Otherwise, they should be put back at the beginning of the dungeon. All right. So the idea there would be, just as a quick little thing, I know we're out of time, but if I go to my dungeon scene, and I'm right here and I go north, when I hit this pellet, I want it to go to that fight scene and for them to fight to the death. And only if the player wins should he be able to successfully pick up that pellet. So we're already having it go to that fight scene, but now we need to take the last piece of logic and say, if the player wins, he gets to successfully collect the pellet. Otherwise, he doesn't. So we're going to communicate back to the game. This will allow us to go and have fights and stuff. All right, questions about any of that? Okay, I will update the code and I will on GitHub, and I will see everybody on Monday.